Right now we are. So, sorry, just to clarify, a double-edged coin, go on?
There are things called double-edged coins.
No, they're not,
you just haven't been to a country that has that type of currency. I have.
Coin has one edge.
As a world traveler,
actually, maybe it has two.
I will assure you that I have come across double-edged coins. In any case, my point being, having children is a double-edged coin.
Yeah, I think sword is the expression, but because it means one or the other. What would a double-edged coin be? Has it got like for example, if it was in the UK, would it have a queen's head on either side?
I mean, look, you may need to go back to when you guys used to, what did you call them? Shillings and farthings and
Threepenny bits.
Whatever Mary Poppins shite was, whatever you call it, yeah. Point being, you watch your kids get older, but they also keep you young because they keep you in touch with younger pop culture. That was the point. Whatever the fucking double-edged sword or coin was, that was the point.
Sorry, just to be clear, are you claiming you're in touch with pop culture? Because I had to tell you what kneecap was the other day. Well, and I mean,
yet again,
it's literally the hot button topic.
No, you see, yet again, like a lot of Western people, you assume that you are living in the center of the world, where I, as an Asian, I'm living in the true center of the world, where the majority of the world population is. So whatever
the West is in the west of the world, surely.
Whatever temporary light pop culture blips appear in the UK that you think are so important, like Robbie Williams, to go back to our discussion.
I'm not sure Kneecap would thank you for calling them some from the UK.
No impact on the rest of the world whatsoever.
Fair enough.
I would suggest you move on from the local news to something like BBC World to get a more worldly perspective.
Well, look, by the time this podcast goes out, potentially I would say that there'll be another controversy because you've just mentioned kneecap in the UK in the same sentence.
Well, I can tell you this: by the time this podcast comes out, somebody else is going to be kneecapped. Okay. Jesus.
Anyway, punishment beatings are a real thing and we shouldn't make jokes about them.
Snitches get stitches.
Muffins, yeah. Okay, welcome everyone to episode 93. Welcome to episode 93 of the Tokyo Jazz Joint
sexy.
Book.
Very sexy.
Hang on. Okay, welcome everyone to episode 93 of the Tokyo Jazz Joints podcast. James, how are you this week?
Feeling mighty fine, buddy. How are you doing this week?
Still picking the cola bottles out of my teeth.
Oh, goodness. I thought I at least could get through another episode without thinking of your horrendous snack habits, but I see...
What was it you called them earlier?
The
bottle colas?
Bottle colas.
Bottle colas?
Yeah. It's funny, thinking about it, after we had recorded the previous episode, I do know what those are, and I have seen them, and I'm sure that they're available here in Japan or even in the States, but it was just the way you said it. It was like, hold on, I got to get my cola bottles or something. And I was like, what the hell is he talking about? Like, I literally had no clue you were mentioning some sort of candy, but in any case... We
get them in Haribo, right? Haribo is the famous ones.
Yeah. They make all the different kind of gummies here, right?
Gummies.
Yeah. Well, when we say gummies in Japan, it's a very different meaning to what a lot of our listeners are thinking. It's nothing naughty like that. But in any case, no, it's a gross candy, and you're disgusting for eating them. So please don't bring them on your next trip.
Thank you. I love you too. Okay, so we are in Kansai. We're actually in Osaka, and we're still on our first day. We've just... come off a bit of a high, talking of gummies, with Sub. And we made our way to, again, another place, a bit like Yuri, I suppose, and so many of the places that we've been to, which can sometimes cause confusion, a very popular choice. And we talked about one of these places a few episodes back with a very similar name. But this place was called yet another Vanguard. And it was, again, just in a slightly sort of off the beaten track suburby feeling station to me.
I mean,
anyway,
it's Minami Ibaraki. It is got a subway and also like the monorail that goes in the northern parts, the northern residential parts of Osaka City. And listen, I'm in no way do I want to disparage the lovely city of Osaka, because I do love it down there. But even people I know from Osaka and other parts of the Kansai have said,
there's the but.
Yeah, it can be a little bit gray at times. And believe me, this neighborhood was as gray as it gets. If you look at the Jazz Cafe Vanguard website, which is very nice dark blue themed, and you'll see all these pictures that sort of like explain how to get there from the subway station. It's very close to the subway, but you have to kind of go down and under like an expressway. Again, northern Osaka covered in these massive highways and expressways everywhere. So you'll see what we're talking about. I mean, there's probably not a sign of any, natural substance of greenery or whatnot within 3 or 4 kilometers of this place. And the building itself was another very unique one. Philip, how would you describe the building that Vanguard was in? It's not somebody's house. It's not a residential apartment, but it's not like a mall or a strip mall either. It's a very unique, only in Japan type of like construction, I would say.
Yeah, it's one of these long rectangular buildings that are divided into multiple units. So if you're looking from the outside, you can kind of see each of them has like a sliding door that goes under a small balcony where people often dry their washing. And what's always distinctive about them is when you open your front door, you're kind of in a corridor, but the corridor is outside. So if you step outside your front door, you're on a kind of a landing that you share with the other apartments, but quite often it's exposed. So like if it was raining, for example, heavily, the rain is coming in onto that corridor, so it would actually be wet. And what's kind of wild to me about Vanguard is that when you come up those stairs, it is got one of those just like so distinctly Japanese kind of doors of apartments. It's got a big heavy silver handle, a big heavy silver lock. It's got a letterbox, and it kind of belies what's inside, because when you go in, it's this beautiful space with like a really nice kind of polished wooden floor. It's you can see also possibly his partner, his wife's hand in the place. It's quite domesticated. There's a lot of beautiful like pot plants. There's flowers. There's nice lighting. The piano's got one of these kind of odd sort of like kind of sewn embroidered dust covers. And so it's this weird mixture of a lot of places that we've seen, particularly I think when it's a couple running it, where you get this contrast, because the space itself could just as easily be someone's apartment. So you get this weird combination of like domesticity and then this jazz cafe. So you have all these records, you have instruments, you have the counter, you have alcohol being served, and then you have these little touches of kind of like just domestic spaces with lace and flower pots and vases.
It made perfect sense, because as we started, so we sat down, we ordered a drink. I was off the coffee, but was very thrilled to get some lemon squash, or as you corrected me for the Japanese English, squash, lemon squash.
Squash. Why can't you say it?
Lemon squash.
Squash. It is a mad one to say. Like.
Oh God! But it was a delicious drink that they brought. But
you were very taken with the lemon squash, weren't you? I actually had one too.
Well, it was also. It was only May that we were there, but it was starting just the twinges of that like Japanese humidity, that humid summer. And man, we're talking about hot in the Tokyo region. Osaka in the summer is stupid hot. Like we mentioned, it's all concrete. There's just no shade anywhere. You're kind of like low. The elevation is quite low by sea level, so it's blisteringly hot there. You can imagine that neighborhood would just be wretched in the summer. But going in there for a lemon sukashu would be very refreshing. But Philip, we sat down and then the master came to talk to us a little bit. Do you remember that he sort of gave the background that I think he was a teacher for many, many years. And
he's a high school English teacher, actually.
Yeah, so he wanted to speak English to us, and we both immediately, Philip, how many times over the years living in Japan have you had that experience where you're like, this guy was teaching English? Because whatever level of English that he had.
No, wait a minute, that's harsh.
it was pretty.
No, I'm not having that
level.
because look, I'll tell you right. Okay, when I first went to Japan, I team taught with many English teachers working in the public school system, and I distinctly remember one male teacher who was very into baseball, and he spoke next to no English, and I remember him writing on the board to start a lesson HELLOW, and I thought, that's not a great start, like if that's your level of English. So I think to say it now, first of all, he was a retired teacher. It can be hard to speak any language if you haven't lived in the country that it's spoken. But I think, he did this thing where he kept speaking English, and this is where we differ, because when someone speaks English to me, I usually reciprocate, but you have this tendency to just continue to speak Japanese. So he kept coming over and sort of saying things to us in English, like, oh, where are you from? And like, what are you doing? And all. And you would just keep speaking back to him in Japanese, just trying to beat him down. Any memory of that?
Yeah. No, I don't remember that, but that is 100% something that I would do just because I don't know. I mean, I've lived here a long time, man. And I find it pretty tiresome to try and get a conversation, especially given in this situation where it's not like I'm with my neighbors or something. You know what I mean? Like, this is like, okay, we're in the joint for 45 minutes, maybe an hour at most. And, there might be like things that I want to ask about, like, okay, tell me about the place and how long you've been a jazz fan, and listening to someone sort of have to struggle through English, it's just something. Oh my God, I just find it very, very like exhausting.
Yeah.
To be fair,
it's a minefield. I think it's a minefield
because he
because
hasn't. And to be very, very fair to the guy, who was really lovely and friendly. Okay, he was a teacher for many years, but I mean, how long has he been retired? How often does he get a chance to speak English? Probably, given the location of Vanguard, very infrequently that you're getting some native English speakers pop in. It's not to say that there wouldn't be any foreign customers, but number one, there'll be few. Number two, they might not be English speakers themselves. We've been talking about our friend, Jerome, who's from France. Of course, he speaks English, but not every Western person speaks English. Okay, so he might be out of practice. It could be once or twice a year he gets to speak, and so I should be maybe more accommodating. But no, I mean, I get grumpy, and
but no. I think you need to get that on a T-shirt. I should be more accommodating, and then just on the back, but no.
Well, but you have your own bit of grumpiness, because do you remember the record that was playing that you just gave me the look?
Yeah, there was
you gave me the look where you were just like, can we please just get some violent jazz on? He was playing a Toots Thielsman CD. I mean, look, Toots Thielsman, amazing musician, great career. One of his softer efforts, a little bit bossa nova-y, which, and my feeling about bossa nova, is just like, please shut that shit off immediately. So we were kind of like, okay, this is a lovely, relaxing place. He's got great speakers, but I mean, can we just get something a little noisier on at 3 p.m.? I felt like I was going to fall asleep.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, just going back to the language thing, I think it is always a minefield, right? Because I think, like, traditionally Japan has this, largely speaking, this crippling sort of self-consciousness about English. So there's always that thing of like, people are making the effort and trying, and then you're sort of like, I feel like I should reciprocate. But also, we all know, particularly those who've lived in Japan, that sometimes it gets almost absurd because you speak Japanese better than they speak English, and yet you're continuing to communicate in English and not get the message across. Now, in realistic, it shouldn't matter, because language is language, right? So it doesn't really matter what, I'm speaking one and you're speaking another. As long as you're communicating, it shouldn't really matter. But I do always find it slight kind of minefield, but also, like you say, it can be quite, because you kind of want to dig in to the details a bit more, or sometimes we just want to kind of communicate like what we're doing and why we're here, and kind of cut to the chase a little bit. But in terms of the music, yeah, I mean, I think I was just looking at my photos there. It's like 3:20, right, by this point, and you think it felt a bit earlier, like it was around lunchtime, but actually the day can, even with only two or three places and one was closed, like the day can start to kind of
we've been traveling,
not slip away.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's not to slip away, but I think you reach, it makes kind of sense to me, because at 3:20, I think you're at that point where, like, I've been up for quite a long time by this stage, because I started the day in Sapporo. We haven't been to a hotel or anything, so you're just kind of like, you start to flag a little bit. And I think when you go in somewhere like that and they have this beautiful sound system, you want to hear something that makes you go, whoa. And then you just get this kind of like very sort of like, cocktail lounge kind of record. And you're just like,
any time between 2 and 4 p.m. is my nap time. So I'm already starting to drift a tiny bit, and take my 22-minute power nap. So I was thinking like, okay, you know what? I might just actually lean back, enjoy the lemon squash, and take a little nap. But he was, he was really, really chatty. There weren't any other customers there. At least I have the notes that it was empty. But he's been open for a while. Obviously, there are enough regular customers. I wouldn't imagine the rent in that part of town is very, very steep, especially in a building like that. But it seems that he and his wife they're pretty much there every day. This is where they hang out. This is where they she was reading the paper, I think, when we came in.
Yeah, it's a classic retirement kind of feel, right? Like that's sort of what they're doing with their days, which is amazing, right? I mean, if I could retire and do that, it would be fantastic.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, you'd be doing it anyway at home, so why not? Yeah.
I'll tell you what probably they may be doing. I just noticed a wine bottle there. It says happy anniversary. So it was 2015 they'd opened, but it's his 5-year anniversary, 2020. But I mean, I tell you what they could be spending a lot of their time doing is laminating, because there's nothing people in Japan love more than a laminator. And it was so interesting because I remember commenting to you, because we're sat in this beautiful room, like it's got this beautiful lighting, all these plants, it's got these beautiful wooden blinds, these gorgeous wooden speakers, and then on the window just this printed out like and sort of sellotaped together kind of like sign that says Jazz and Coffee Vanguard, and it's like laminated just stuck on the window. And I thought, and then when you go downstairs, there's that sign that is covered, it must be covered in about 5 meters of like cling film or saran wrap for our Japanese listeners. Like it's to protect it from the rain, and you just get this like everything is covered in plastic.
Is that the one with the arrow and the steps drawing and it says "Go upstairs"?
Go upstairs, full stop.
Yeah. I think I've got
go upstairs, full stop.
Yes. Well, again, because like we said, I've actually got a picture of the mailboxes at the bottom of the steps, because you've got the Jazz and Coffee Vanguard, then you've got like some sort of like small like real estate investment office, and then you've just got like a Yamazaki-san. Like somebody named Yamazaki lives in the building. Philip, we've talked many times about the reason that these kinds of like bizarre places can be so multifunctional is because unlike, and I think it's the same in Northern Ireland, but it's definitely the case in the States, they don't have the same kind of zoning laws here in Japan that they do.
Yeah,
so you could just have
a thing, right?
You can have a building where there's like an old couple like who's lived there for like 40 years, and then there's like a jazz cafe, and then there's like a tiny guy doing real estate stuff, and it's all just the same hallway, all jumbled together, and that just, it's unthinkable that you would see that back in the US for sure.
Yeah, no, you just, there's absolutely no way. I mean, it would be shut down for various violations of whatever the hell the codes are. So, yeah, I mean, it was a nice place to spend an hour, I think.
Well, do you remember though, when we left, I noticed by the register, I mean, he has got a lot of music. He's got a lot of vinyl and CDs there. And I noticed that he had up on one of those little CD stands an album by Dusko Gojkovic. I think it was a live album. And immediately I just was thinking like, oh man, how come we weren't playing that? Like I would totally love to have heard that live album, but it was burning, Instead, we got the sort of like sleepy afternoon bossa nova with harmonica. But clearly he's got a mixture of, it's not all just the soft stuff. But a place that I think I wouldn't mind going back to again when I go back to Osaka and just spending an hour or so and just chatting with them. But yeah, they were really nice. They've got a lovely place. Just one of these only in Japan places again.
Yeah, it's sort of hard to imagine it ever busy. I mean, actually, just looking at the photos, there's only really, there's a lot of, it looks quite big, there's a lot of space, but actually it's really only our table and another table, and then there's the little counter space. I wish I didn't get a photo. I think I asked to photograph him and her because they seemed like such a nice couple, and they were framed by this, like, almost floor to ceiling rack of CDs behind them, and it was beautiful, but I don't think I got a photograph of it. But yeah, got a nice space, and like, sure, it's not going to be in your top 10, it's not one that you're going to remember forever, but it again, just a testament, I think, to the wealth of of places that exist, and looking on the sign there as well, I noticed that they're closed Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So, I mean, what a life, right? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you're off. You can, look after your grandkids, do shopping, whatever you need to do. And Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you go and open your jazz cafe, sit and listen to music and drink coffee, read the paper.
Check in with me in about 15 years, man, because that's going to be my schedule.
Right.
100%.
Right. Anyway, okay, so that was Vanguard. And then we headed to probably one of the more surreal experiences I think that we've had. I mean, we've had a few kind of quite comical ones, but this one...
Surreal, mysterious, funny.
This one was weird.
Very, very Osaka. A lot of different things going on with the next...
So let me just tell you and listeners what my memory of the situation is.
Well, you got to remember, first, we did stop off. We were dying to get a bite, so we stopped off for some local okonomiyaki. You can't be in Osaka with having either takoyaki, which is fried octopus balls, or okonomiyaki, the delicious.
Did we not do that after? No, had we had that before?
No, I think that was before Wing. Yeah, because we were, or was it before? Well, it was the same street.
I don't think you're sure about that.
It was the same street. I've got it here as like...
It was the same street, but we were at Wing at 5 o'clock, so I think probably we hadn't had food yet.
Check one of your famous timestamps on your photos, and then you...
5 o'clock, 5:06 at Wing, so we couldn't have had
so the
food.
okonomiyaki was post-Wing. Yes, post-Wing disappointment. Okay.
Post-Wing okonomiyaki. It's a classic. Well, look, Wing was another one of those places that we, kind of like a two-tier, a second-tier type place. Like, it's not maybe that well known or whatever, but we kind of knew it was there. We were in the neighborhood and it looked like it fit the bill, so we decided to go. And what we kind of found was so kind of wet, raining slightly at the time. It was on this wet street, again under an awning, very clearly marked Wing, and like a kind of a door that's painted pinkish color, and it just has very simply 4 different color letters on the glass, on one of the panes of the glass, that says Wing. And we thought, brilliant, happy days. And when we got to the door, the door was locked, but the owner was sitting at the counter. And my only memory really of this is just you. It's just you going, "Hey, den desu ka? Hey, den desu ka?" And so when we tried to get in first, he was like, he sort of went, no, like shook his hand as if to say we're closed, which we obviously understood. That's fine, or we'd missed it. But by shouting "Hey, ten," for those of you who don't speak Japanese, it means, well, it can mean the shop is closed, but it can also mean like permanently closed, like closing down. So what we were trying to get through this class, and there was no sense of him getting up to explain or be like to clarify the situation. So, we kind of tried again, and then he sort of just kept going, no, which then proceeded for you to start shouting, "Hey, ten desu ka? Hey, ten desu ka?"
Well, that's no, yes, because hey ten is specifically means like the shop is no longer open for business. Yeah, not like you're closed today, but there were so many strange things about it. Okay, so the usual sign, or at least the sign that we'd seen on Google, which was more than like 9 years ago. There's no like contemporary photos of it. It has this kind of like jazz coffee sort of red sign with another one that says JBL. Okay, so those weren't out there. And then when you look through the window, you could see that there was just like piles, stacks and stacks of folders and papers and boxes on the tables and on the counter. So it didn't even look like there was anywhere that you could possibly sit. And yet the owner was back there doing something. He was like fiddling around the paper. So I just assumed that, okay, maybe he was packing up to leave, like he was slowly closing up the shop or whatever. But everything about him, this guy couldn't give, he just couldn't give a damn that I was knocking. He was just like, no, closed.
Yeah, there was absolutely no. It was just like no, and it's funny because it made me think it could have been a really interesting chat if he'd been up for it, because it reminded me of Jazia. Like it's sometimes like we've been in that situation where we get to somewhere it's closed either for the day or they're not open that day, close to the day, or closed, for that particular day, like the business hours are over or whatever. And sometimes we'll get people that, out of curiosity or whatever else, or just politeness, they're like, "Oh, sorry, what can I help you?" And we've been able to like kind of blag ourselves blag our way in, at least for a chat. And in the case of Jazz, I think we got a drink and everything else. But this guy was just, it was like, and fair enough, like if he's closing up the business, I also got that sense that, it was kind of, I'm here, but I'm sorting through, because, the door obviously was exposed, but the window had the shutter down still. So it may just be, and I think there was something then, we might have looked it up, or I don't know, we looked up on Google or something that maybe gave us an indication that in fact it was permanently closing. But so if you know Wing, or you've been to Wing, or you've got any info on that, like reach out and let us know.
And
but
I wonder
as far as
also,
we were,
because the street that it's on, it is like Chodo Central, Osaka. It's a short walk from Namba Station, one of the biggest stations in Osaka. Okay, so there's tons of like hotels and now big new shopping plazas around the neighborhood. And yet he's at the corner in this little dumpy old building. And I'm just wondering if, because it doesn't seem like the location you would lack for customers, even getting the non-jazz customers, right? So, but it just, something about his attitude struck me that like, okay, this isn't just, grumpy old guy. This is like a guy that clearly maybe has had a lot of people knocking on the door, including maybe tourists. I don't know. Again, Wing, not a famous jazz key, so there's no information about it anywhere except for the address at Jazz Kisa JP, which is how we found it. So yeah, a mystery. I was trying to find a phone number for it after we came back from Osaka, and I just couldn't find anything. The most recent comment I found was 6 years ago. That it said, "There's always jazz playing." And that was the only comment. It was like, okay, sounds great. But yeah, Wing looks like a place that sadly we're not going to be able to get into.
Yeah, well, there you go. I mean, so if anyone has any other intel, do let us know. But it was just one of those brilliant interactions through a door. I just really thoroughly, I remember us chuckling we weren't even that sad about not getting in. It was just more the entertainment.
We were crossing our arms and saying close to each other for the rest of the trip.
Yeah,
we were looking at places. So
it's just one of those brilliant moments.
I almost feel bad about the guy. He was probably thinking like, who are these two foreign dudes bothering me? Anyways.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was Wing. And as you said there earlier, then we popped off for some much needed okonomiyaki to fortify ourselves for what turned out to be initially kind of in our heads, I think was a slight confusion, because there's a couple of places that had used this strange cubic prefix, but also I think, again, these are not places that we were particularly familiar with, and as tends to happen, when you've been to some of the big hitters and the kind of the better known places, you kind of tend to think, well, the other places are going to be simply lesser. But actually this place, I think, was probably one of my favorites of this particular trip. And we had just like an incredible end to the day at this place called Spot, which was a bit of a trek, and also it was kind of a wet night, so we pushed on. And I mean, what can you say about Spot? What an incredible place.
Oh, I mean, yeah, so we get up, we're in central Osaka when we finish dinner, but we get back on the train to go south all the way down towards the airport. So we're in a city called Kaizuka, which is part of Osaka. I guess you don't call it prefecture, Osaka municipal area, but it's its own city called Kaizuka. It's right on the coast. And, we come out, it's raining, and I immediately saw like a gigantic like display of what in Japanese they call omikoshi, the sort of portable shrines that you see the guys at the festivals carrying them, when they walk through the streets. And so I thought, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if there's a festival here. We found out later on that this is the site of a major, major festival. But, we walk down a rainy street and we come into Spot, and immediately it was kind of strange because you come in and it reminded me of suburban American houses where you open the front door and immediately there's just steps going up on the right side and steps going down on the left side. And you're like, oh, it's one of these weird split level buildings. I don't think I've ever seen this. I don't think I've ever really seen this in Japan. So we kind of like, and there's nobody there. We hear, and it's kind of dim. And so I think we just kind of shouted out the usual, like, "Sumimasen," and eventually, like, our man comes out and he's like, okay, come down. And so we walk down the steps and we sit down at the counter, and right away I just felt like yes, this is going to be something kind of unique and special. It just had that. It's hard to describe why, Philip. We've been to so many places, but we just know sometimes. You just know sometimes it's like, okay, we want to spend some time in here.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna just do a quick summary of my notes, and then we can take them one at a time, because I think just these notes, I think, sum up not only how incredible the place was, but also just the range of kind of things that you get in a jazz kisa, like or a jazz bar when you talk to some of these owners. So here's the 5 bullet points, and then we can take them one at a time. Nishide-san, 80 years old, with 2 cancers and still smoking 30 a day. Bullet point 2, people scared to enter. Bullet point 3, still rides motorbike home in silver helmet. Bullet point 4, protested at Anpo and still listens to the jazz of his youth. And then bullet point 5, a felt toilet seat. So which one do you want to take first?
I mean, I've got some other bullet points too. I've got, he got a small moon rock from the Osaka Expo in 1970. We forgot.
I forgot that one. I forgot about that one.
We forgot to mention that while we're in Osaka, literally everybody's asking us, "Did you come for the?" So all year long, Osaka has been the 2025 World Expo in Osaka, which has millions of visitors, and both of us were just like, "No, I didn't even know what's going on." It shows.
Also, we learned the word for it, right? Because people were using that.
Yes, Banpaku.
Banpaku. Yeah. That's it. Yeah,
yes. So he again asked us, "Did you come for the expo?" Like, no, we actually came to come see shops like yours. And then he mentioned that he had the small moon rock from going to Osaka Expo 1970. I also had down about the smoking, but then he said something like, the quote I have is, "You can't not smoke after dinner because then you can't relax." And I was like, okay, this is a good one. I've got drinking canned beer out of a wine glass. I've
amazing.
got YouTube videos that he said he has watched repeatedly and tried to translate. I don't even know if that's really correct. And then best of all, he has a website. I mean, this is not a guy or shop you would think would have a nice website, but he's got a lovely website with the very, very gorgeous slogans: slow coffee and slow jazz. Busy modern life needs rest, jazz music, and coffee. There are places where they can be obtained. I mean, right away, I just want to cry at that slogan. And it's all in English on his website. Please do look it up. It's cafespot.jp. I mean, literally everything about this place was memorable and wonderful. You know, I mean, I don't even know how to talk about it like rationally, because I love Nishide-san. He was super, super chatty as well. Once he sat down and realized we spoke Japanese, remember?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah, I don't know. Like you say, I don't quite know. I mean, photographically speaking, for me, I mean, I'm just flicking through the photos. I haven't edited them yet, but I mean, I think you could almost do like a little zine just on this place, because there's so many things. Like, I mean, and what we haven't mentioned is I ventured upstairs with permission, and upstairs is another whole section where you can sit. It's obviously there's gaps, so the music filters up and filters down, but upstairs, has this beautiful, I mean, I don't know where to even start. There's this, I mean, there's a really nice photo I've got of like a faded old piece of Japanese paper with a beautiful kind of Zen calligraphy circle drawn on it, and then just below that there's a plastic poster of a polar bear holding an iced coffee, and then another poster that says "Let's coffee touring," which is quite nice. And you've also got he had the letters spot upstairs, and again, I mean, it's such a kind of jazz photo, but like he's got these 4 letters that just say spot and in set against the window, and then you just have this kind of wet, dark Osaka night, with all the street lights and the shop lights, and I mean, it's just.
I mean,
like I say, photographer's dream. I mean, it was just an amazing place to photograph.
Everything with the photographs, and then with the chat. I mean, he, I've got as well. I forgot. There's yet another bullet point. It says, so he really loved Humphrey Bogart movies, and he loved the Humphrey Bogart movie set in Morocco. I can only assume that means Casablanca, right? Because clearly it was not filmed in Morocco. But in any case, ended up Philip, do you remember this? You must have come back from upstairs. He pulled out a photo album of his trip to Morocco, Egypt, and Turkey. And I was like, wow, that is really an awesome trip. And he's like, yeah, that was the first time I ever got on an airplane. And I was like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, I was 50 years old.
Right.
I was 50 years old. And that was my first flight. And I went to Morocco. And I was just like, I mean, how many times we met Japanese people in the kisas or just in daily life. And, their first trips are usually either to like someplace like Korea or Taiwan, very close, or to the US, Hawaii, whatever. But like this guy's like, no, I'm going to go to Morocco and Egypt and Turkey. And it's like, and then he showed me like 3 or 4 photo albums of him and a whole bunch of people that he knew on a sort of a tour, meeting with local people and doing all this stuff. And it was just like, I mean, I didn't even know how to talk to him. I mean, everything that he was telling me was just like, one thing after another was so surprising,
Yeah, I mean, just even the branding, he had this kind of like little, I think it's sort of like a peace sign, right? But it also looks vaguely like the Playboy bunny logo. But he has that all on all the old branding, and there were absolute reams and reams of coffee tickets. Again, if you don't know Japan as well, and just in general in Kisaten, what you would have got certainly in the past was you buy, again, there's a way for business to make money, and guarantee kind of income. You don't go in and buy your coffee, you buy like a service ticket, so it's maybe slightly cheaper, but you buy 10 coffees or 20 coffees or whatever, and a bit like a bottle, keep your names on them, so when you come in, you either use one of those tickets, or in this case they just write your name and the date on the ticket, so when you've used it. So you don't need money. They also get that money up front to cover costs and that kind of thing. And so these were all stuck up on the wall. There was also an incredible sleeveless T-shirt hanging up as a kind of a one-off merch with like where the name Spot was spelled out with these tiny little silver studs on the T-shirt. There was like so many things in the place that it was one of those joints where you're kind of like, I don't know where to look and I need to look at everything at once, but also I can't see all these things at the same time. The standout for me was obviously there was a gorgeous black and white, like kind of, it looked almost like computer generated painting of him smoking on the back wall. I mean, and then he went and sat underneath that and smoked.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, I remember that. That was great. Yeah, it did look like, my memory was that, like, I think I thought at the time it was, when you're a kid and you get that like sort of magnet game where you can like draw on it. It's like a screen and it's got the little magnetic chips in it, and you run your finger along and you make like little drawings. Like that's sort of
like Etch-a-Sketch.
Etch-a-Sketch, right. Exactly. Etch-a-Sketch. That's sort of what it looked like, but like a really beautiful one of him. Yeah. And he was sitting under that, and then he was fiddling with his computer, and just, it was really amazing because he did come and talk to us a lot, but then he went back and had his cigarette, fiddled with the YouTube. Eventually he put on a couple of albums as well, but I get the feeling that when he's there most of the time, he's usually just checking videos on YouTube, like, jazz concerts.
Yeah, he did. I've got kind of mashup. He did a mashup actually, because it was kind of YouTube CD and LP, but like you say, had one of those kind of like older, almost like flat screen monitor type, kind of plasticky looking monitors that he had YouTube on, and he did use that a lot. But like, I mean, the man's 80, right? He still rides home every night on this motorbike, and there's just this kind of, it's not like a fatalism, but there's just this acceptance of, because, he was smoking away, and then he said about being sick, and we were like, oh, and, but I mean, he's there smoking, so that you're kind of thinking, okay, the implication is here that he's better, and he went, oh no, I've still got 2 cancers. Like,
yeah, and you're
just so kind of matter of fact, right?
Totally,
we were like,
totally, man.
Okay,
yeah, and
right.
You're just like, okay, look, you know what? This guy, he's 80 years old. He's running this shop for more than half his life. He's still Genki enough to be riding. And if you look on the website, there's a little gallery space. You can see a picture of him looking like a real boss, standing outside the shop in sunglasses next to his motorcycle, next to his Yamaha motorcycle. But yeah, it's just kind of like, okay, this is who I am. This is what I do. I don't really care that, maybe people are going to tell me that I should not have this lifestyle because I'm unwell, but I'm going to ride my motorcycle. I'm going to have my cigarettes. I don't know if he was boozing it up. It looked like he was drinking coffee when we went in. But yeah, I absolutely love the guy. We ended up staying, I think, for two. We had two canned beers in the wine glasses, I believe.
Oh, we were there a good while. We were there a good while. We came out stinking of smoke too. I don't know. I think that was probably just him. I don't think it was anything to do with anyone else smoking. But I'm pretty sure it was just him. But I think it was really interesting because he talked about, like if you ever get the chance to go to Spot, first of all, definitely go. But we came along this very familiar street in any Japanese city. But what was interesting was that he remembered a time when on the opposite side of the street, the water actually came up to the side of the street. And obviously that had been reclaimed and developed over the years. But the other thing about being scared to enter was, even now, he said, people, even though it's on this street and there's lots of, fairly pedestrian type shops around it, he said, even then, he just doesn't get the customers because he thinks people, even in 2025 are still kind of scared to enter. Well, there's Philip, just something about a jazz place.
Yeah, we know this. I mean, people, we know this from a lot of, from Japanese friends and acquaintances, and other owners have said this, that, there's an image that, first of all, people are, for whatever reasons, intimidated by jazz. They've got the image that these places will just be full of grumpy older men who may not want a stranger walking in, which would apply doubly to anyone under the age of 40 or to any women customers. And, they're not exactly wrong. There are cafes that do have that, but most of them actually are, pretty much fine these days. That's an outdated condition of the Jazz Key. So these days, we've seen a lot of different diverse customers in, but I can totally understand why people would feel that way. Back 1 second though, you mentioned about the road and the sea being that used to be right up to it before they had the reclaimed land. So Kaizuka City. So the Chinese character for Kai is seashell. And along the whole coast there, and we'll get into this in one of our other Osaka episodes actually coming forward, where we get deeper south along the coast. But these communities were very much like fishing communities, and I think he even mentioned that when he was a kid, most of the people in this town were either fishermen or were working in businesses that had to do with the sea. So it's very much a part of the traditional culture there, which is sadly, look, I mean, I get it. They had to do reclaim land. They had to build the airport. Things changed. You got to modernize, whatever. But it's kind of sad to think that sort of aspect of the local culture has dying out, because when this guy goes and other people his age, there's nobody going to be left that remembers that time, Yeah,
100%. And I mean, just, even then, I mean, if you're not sure what AMPO is, it was a huge, student protest movement against the American involvement in Japan, and particularly the renewal of security treaties and things like that. But it's also something that, would have been traditionally, or not traditionally, would have been associated with Jazz Kisa, which were, a real hotbed of protest and bohemian counterculture in the 60s and that kind of thing. So, this man is really of his time, and there he is at 80, older than my dad, just ticking away every night, smoking 30, unlike my dad, smoking 30 a day, and just doing what he loves, listening to the music he loves. And it was just an incredible experience. And then, of course, I discovered for the first time in my life a felt toilet seat, which is something I'd only really heard about as a thing of myth from the 70s. Well, but I mean,
that's interesting.
The germ.
That's really funny, because we are pretty much the same age, both born in 74. Maybe that was more an American thing, because I 100% remember as a child.
Oh, really?
Where you would go to somebody's house and they would have a sort of I wouldn't say felt, it was almost like fur, like a furry sort of seat cover toilet. And sometimes back in those days, people even used to have carpeting in the bathroom, which is just
I remember that.
Inexplicable. Listen, you know how finicky I am about germs and stuff, okay? So you could imagine, even as a child, I was something in my mind thinking this doesn't seem right. Why would you want to have a carpet next to your toilet?
Well, do you know what? Actually, maybe I've blanked it out, as maybe there's some trauma there, because actually, looking through old family photos recently, I found a photograph of me and my brother in the bath, I think, and there's actually the side of the bath the side of the bath is carpeted, so maybe I've just. But I mean, here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. And I think this is the last social taboo that's left. So this could blow everything out of the water. This is the final social taboo. Why don't men sit down to pee? Because when you go to places in Japan, you will quite often see a sign encouraging men to sit down and pee. So that could go hand in hand with the felt toilet seat, because obviously if you're not standing to pee, it's much more hygienic than if you're standing over a felt seat and peeing. So that could be the connection, or it could just be that he hasn't changed the toilet seat since the 70s, but it did fill me with slight fear.
All I'm going to say about that is, listen, there's a lot of things that the 70s has to account for. And number two, the amount of times that I got to go to the Jazz Kisa bathroom, okay, after I've been on a full day out with you drinking coffee and beer, I'm not sitting down on one of these gnarly, disgusting toilets, okay? Believe me. I don't even want to touch the doorknob, okay? I'm putting my hand under my T-shirt to open the doorknob, so there's no way I'm sitting down on one of these toilets, let alone a furry felt one, okay?
For those male listeners who are more open-minded and are not products of the 70s, just try sitting down when you pee. It'll change your life. It'll change your life. Anyway, look, that was day one of our Kansai trip, and
only day one, and we've covered
a fair bit, yeah. Exhausting day, but always it was kind of validating, always invigorating, and it set us up really for a really nice day too, actually, and we continued where we left off.
Actually, because we had contemplated, because there were a couple late opening bars in Osaka that are on our list, and we had contemplated zooming back into town. It wasn't too late; it was about 9:30 or so. But I think spot was so great, we just decided to stay and have another drink and just be like, what, this is the perfect spot to end the day, and it was. Yeah,
I think sometimes you do that, right? We quite often on these trips, we kind of have to make these judgment calls about what's possible. And I certainly, and I think you're probably the same, that we try to keep in mind what draws us to these places in the first place. So it's not about collecting numbers. It's not about just got to get everywhere photographed. And I never wanted it to be a thing where you kind of parachute in, take the photo and go. And it's always been about spending time there, and it's always approached as customers first. And we order, we put money in the business, we chat, and build a rapport, and we get, as a result, we get to hear these kind of stories and that kind of thing. And so this was a really good example where we thought, look, you could rush off and do something else, but actually, do you know what? This is just so amazing. And such an incredible place, and it was just wonderful. So I'm so glad that we made that call to stay. And yeah, we were ready and raring to go for what was actually day 8 of my trip and day 2 of our trip in Kansai. And we've got some real belters for the next couple of episodes.
I mean, this was hey, recency bias maybe, but this was an absolutely kick-ass trip. I'm so excited to talk about three of the upcoming joints in particular, but all of them were amazing. So
likewise,
yeah, can't wait, buddy. We'll talk soon.
All right, man.
Ciao. Bye.
Bye.